So we just start then where we stopped yesterday. So that's the MaxQuant basic session, part 3. And now we actually have a slightly different topic from what we were seeing in part 1 and part 2. So now we want to see how it works in MaxQuant if you have ion mobility data. So that means that you have ion mobility as an additional separation dimension on top of the mass separation that the mass spectrometer of course does, and liquid chromatography, right? So now you have actually three-dimensional separation, and you have then intensities sitting on this three-dimensional space, which means we're talking about the four-dimensional raw data space in which we have to do now feature detection and all of these things. This of course has some implication on the MaxQuant workflow, so things will have to be adapted in the workflow. And so maybe let's have another look at the workflow again. So we saw it already in the first part of MaxQuant basic talks. So this is what you do from feature detection to writing out the output tables. And so obviously some things are very heavily affected by having now this additional dimension of ion mobility in your data, and some things will be just the same. Like for example, protein group assembly and protein FDR and these kind of things, they will be hardly affected by having the raw data looking differently now, right? So this will be just the same, just needs minor adaptations. But things like feature detection, so this is going to be very different because this has now to detect the features in a space that has one dimension more than there used to be. And also the preparation of MSMS spectra should be different because they have to be projected down also from a higher dimensional space, from a higher dimensional data space to the single spectra that we used to and that we can put into search engines like Andromeda. Right? So this will be very different. But most of the other things just go through from the conventional LC-MSMS data analysis workflow. Nevertheless, we still had to do some work on that as well to have basically the correct reference of these steps to the raw data, which is now quite different, right? But there's no real algorithmic new conceptual things that one would have to do here. So it's just plain work, basically. But here, of course, the concepts, algorithmic concepts are quite different from the usual LC-MSMS data. So yeah, so that's what you know from the LC-MS workflow. So there we were working with 3D features. So we had the mass going in this direction, or mass divided by charge to be correct. We had the retention time, and so this is what an isotope pattern looks like. So it's these mountains over this plane. So it's three-dimensional objects that we have been detecting there. There's a question over there. But wait for the microphone, please.
I have a question to the team's talks in terms of mass accuracy.
Yeah.
That should be a difference towards the other instruments that are supported. How will that be implemented?
Yeah, so the mass accuracy, I mean, you will actually hear more about the hardware itself and its properties on Friday. So there's a talk by Scarlett Beck from Bruta, who's actually saying a lot about these things and hardware properties. The mass accuracy, of course, you also have to apply a nonlinear recalibration here to achieve high mass accuracy. And so the difference here to what you saw yesterday is that now we also have to make the mass recalibration dependent on the ion mobility dimension. So that's actually a huge contribution to the nonlinear mass error, and so we do actually recalibrate dependent on the ion mobility index or on the collision cross section. So we do that, and also of course, since these are TOF instruments, you also have an intensity dependence of your mass error, and we also take that into account. Yeah. So that's all calibrated away, and then but the final answer that you get, the mass accuracy of the peptides, at the moment it's slightly lower, but one also has to say that these platforms are still under current development, and so I think that's not the final answer that we get what the mass accuracy is. So that I think that's anyway in the process of being strongly improved still. Okay. So that was the features that we used to detect yesterday in LCMS data. And now we're talking about a four-dimensional feature space. So so in this table here you see how it used to be in the LCMS world, and now we have this eigenmobility spectrometry dimension on top. So when we had a two-dimensional input space here consisting of mass and retention time, so now we have a three-dimensional input space consisting of mass, retention time, and eigenmobility index. Or you could also take the collision cross-section here, so you can parameterize this dimension in many ways, but you have an additional dimension for sure. So in this world here, the peaks or the features used to be 3D objects, and now there are 4D objects in this world here. And since these were 3D objects, these were actually quite easy to visualize. So for example, one could just make a heat map display, where the x and y of the heat map are mass and retention time, and then you color code the intensity. Or you could show them as 3D surface plots, like a 3D object that you can turn, and so on. So that's all easy going. But now, since we have this additional dimension, the full feature is actually very hard, quite hard to visualize. And so there are two things you can do. So one is you go to projections of your data. So that means that, for example, you know a certain feature is interesting and has a certain mass, retention time, and cross-section. Then you could basically center yourself onto this feature, and you just keep one of these dimensions fixed, right? So you could, for example, say, I want to look at this now at fixed retention time, or something like this. And so then you basically reduce to one dimension lower, and you're back to the old problem. So then you have something again that you can visualize at heat maps, or 3D objects, and that's also things you can do in the viewer. So if you analyze this kind of data with MaxQuant and you open it in the viewer, then all the views that you had for LCMS data, you have now here also for this data in any projection you want to make, for example, at fixed eigenmobility index or things like this. Or one could maybe visualize the contour surface, so basically the surface that is surrounding the feature in the three-dimensional space of mass, retention time, and eigenmobility, which is also something that is coming soon. So this is not yet in MaxQuant, but that is coming soon. Right, and so, yeah, the question is, how do we now analyze the data? So the challenge here is, of course, to keep the computing time down. So that's very important here, because since we're talking about a whole new dimension, it could be that the required computing time for the feature detection could actually be infinitely more than what we used to have for LCMS data, and that's fortunately not the case. So it's still, of course, it's a little bit more demanding, but we're talking about maybe factors of 3 or something like this, that it takes longer compared to normal LCMS data. So it's absolutely doable, and it's absolutely in reach of dealing with it just by maybe buying a slightly more powerful computer or using the CPUs on your computer now full, which you maybe have not been using so far in 200%. So I think the kind of computational aspects of realistically being able to analyze the data on moderate hardware is really solved, I think, in MaxQuant for eigenmobility data. And so how do we actually do it? So it's kind of like the mathematician's approach, always reduce the new problem that you have to an old problem that you have already solved, basically. And so we do this by slicing. So the main idea is that we, this cube of eigenmobility, mass, and retention time, we want to chop into slices, and for these slices we can just use the conventional MaxQuant LCMS algorithms for feature detection. So as the first step, basically. And so in order to do that, one has to do a couple of technical things. So one has to put all of the data onto a common grid, which is actually not the case in the Drucker raw file as you get it from the raw file. So one has to make a common grid for all the data. and one has to do some smoothing, so to get some nice looking data out where the 2D feature detection works well on. So we smooth the data in all directions. So I don't go into details of the smoothing, but so that just be said that the data has to be prepared before you actually can apply the feature detection to it. Yeah, and then after all the smoothing in all three directions, we, as I said, we slice it up and we slice it in the eye mobility direction, which means that so what the data per slice is actually exactly what we know from before. So this is exactly this kind of data with mass and retention time as x and y axis. And so there we can just apply the conventional MaxQuant feature detection.
So this is what?
So that's what we do here.
And this is connected.
So we determine features
here and here. And this
in
is
each of these slices.
to the ground.
So what
And
is
then,
different?
and the features are
Nothing.
exactly as you know it from conventional LCMS. So it's not just rectangles, but it's really
Better.
things that follow,
It's the same,
that
like
try to follow the shape
frequencies.
of the
We change a little
intensity
bit.
of a
But
peptide
it's
or
work.
isotopic peak of a peptide as good as
It's
possible,
like-
right?
Yeah.
And you do this in all of the slices.
And it's the same.
So then, once we have this
Yes.
data, we now have to assemble these features across these slices, right? So this
It gets the
is an
idea.
example of a feature,
I don't know where
like
from
a
here
cartoon
maybe.
example of a feature.
Maybe it's the same option.
So these are slices here,
Yesterday.
and this is the eye mobility index. So these are consecutive slices in the data, and then you see how the feature
It's the same
appears
setting
here and
as
grows and grows, and then fades
So
again.
it's exactly what we did
And so
yesterday.
then one needs an algorithm that
But
assembles,
then
that
it gets
can
the-
basically collects all of these features that belong together, and then assembles them into basically this 4D feature, as you might want to call it. Basically. So that's then also done. And so once this is done, so this is actually not done for isotopic patterns, but for single features. So single features are determined and then assembled over the additional dimension, and so then we do the de-isotoping of these 4D features.
Where's the
So
picture
here's
you
the
took
3D
yesterday?
case, but you have to
Of the
imagine there's no
camera
one more
setup.
dimension for these. And also then for the assembly of the isotope pattern, one can then use the intensity correlation not only in retention time, but also in
This diagram.
collision cross-section.
Mhm.
Right? So
Yeah,
that
I
adds
think you
more
should show it.
specificity
Let's
to
do
the
it.
assembly of
After.
isotope patterns.
No, wait a second. Wait.
What?
Wait a second.
Right. So for the MSMS spectra, one also has to do something new.
Yeah.
So they also live now in a higher dimensional space, where an additional dimension is spent by the eye mobility, and so they have to be projected down to a conventional spectra in this way, which is easy because then so basically we have already dealt with the MS1 features, and so we know exactly where the surrounding shape of the MS1 feature is in mass, intensity, retention time, space, and so we use exactly then these boundaries basically to read out the MSMS fragment intensity information, and then just project it down to a thing that just is intensities over mass. So basically a spectrum as you know it and as we usually submit it to the search engine. And this will then of course also be submitted to the Andromeda search engine. So so now we have the basic data, we have the MS1 features, and so for these we also then use the mass calibration ideas that we had before. So as I mentioned before, now it's also depending on the collision cross-section and on the intensity of the peak. So it's actually depending on, so it's non-linear recalibration based on 4 continuous parameters. Right? So we have high mass accuracy, or as high as possible, basically by of the systematic effects. We do the retention time alignment, we can do ion mobility alignment, and after doing this, we can of course also here do matching between runs, between LCMS runs. So as we already saw yesterday, so matching between runs means that if you have 2 peptide features, like the orange ones here in run 1 and run 2, and they have same mass within a certain window and same retention time within a certain window. And one of them is identified, like for example this one of them is not identified, then we can transfer, like we can assume that this is the same peptide and use it for quantification, right? And of course the same is the case for ion mobility data. It's just, it works much better because you have now higher specificity because you have actually another dimension as a criterion which also has to match, right? So if this is supposed to be the same peptide, it should also have the same collisional cross-section, right? So actually matching between runs is actually only improving by having this additional dimension. Right, and yeah, here you just see, so you actually will see much more about how it works and benchmarks and what. Just to show you just one very preliminary example where we did label-free quantification on a benchmark data set with 3 species, which is then mixed in exactly those ways that you have one species 1-to-1, one species should go down by a factor of 2, and one species should go up by a factor of 2, and you see that that's the case. So in print, it's just to show you that it's working in general. So label-free quantification is working in MaxQuant on ion mobility data. And also, so it's not only label-free is working, also TMT is working on this kind of data. And so here the promise would be that because you do have this additional co-fragmentation problem also gets less severe because you actually then may separate things that were completely eluting in the LCMS space by this additional dimension. You may or may not separate it, right? But at least it can only get better as well and not get worse. Right, so what is not working yet is actually MS1 label quantification. So that will also come at some point, like for example SILAC or something. But this, so in the current MaxQuant version, that is not working yet, coming at some point. Yeah, so, okay, so let me say availability of this feature, so ion mobility, so it is available, it's running well. As I said, you can do label-free quantification, you can do TMT. So one small thing that is also missing yet is support for Linux. So that's a general feature of Bruker data, that it's absolutely possible. We just haven't done it yet. So be patient, a few more days or a week or 2. Then there will be a new version where you can also run the ion mobility workflow on Linux machines. Okay, so so let me say something about availability in general. So now you have the software on the USB sticks, but you can get it from so you can get the MaxQuant version, always the latest from the MaxQuant website, also Perseus you get from the website, but you can also just Google and you will be brought to the page. So we have help forums for both MaxQuant and Perseus. So these are Google groups, and they're quite active, also quite big. So I think the MaxQuant group is going towards 6,000 users. Perseus should be around 2,000 or something like this at the moment. And so the idea here is that so these are basically self-maintained group by the users. So it's not. I mean, we of course try our best to answer questions, but we also rely on that expert users are helping beginning users, right? So that's very much, I mean, there are many users who actually spend time and effort to answer questions of the other users, and that is of course very much appreciated that we have people like this in the community, so that's very nice. And so then we also have a bug reporting system, this track here. And so here you should go if you found a problem that's reproducible. So 2 important things. It should be reproducible in the latest version of the software. So either in the latest MaxQuant release or in the latest Perseus release. So why do we ask that? Because the problem might be already solved, right? And if you report
report a problem that is already solved, then we both waste time, basically, you and us, basically, right? So that should be avoided. And also, so the problem should really be reproducible. So you should be able to say you have to do exactly this and this and this, and if you follow these steps, and maybe also have to provide some data to do that, then you will run into this problem, because only then a developer can work on it. So one should not say, I have the feeling something is somehow weird. So I mean, that's not helping, basically, right? So it should be a bit more concrete what exactly the problem is. So in general, so it's not completely open source. So we have
more the idea of a local, very focused development team and not so much community development. But however, this is also changing. So in particular for Perseus activities, so there we also really want some kind of community development effort, which we do through the plugins, which we'll see later in this week. And nevertheless, we have a lot of source code actually openly available and hosted on GitHub. There are these two repositories here where you can find lots of source code of MaxQuant.
And yeah, last but not least, so you're aware that we are filming here, and it's actually broadcast live, so one can watch it now. But also the videos will go to YouTube, and there's actually lots of videos already from the previous summer schools, which you can also watch there. So yeah, I think that's actually what I have, and so maybe we go to questions now. But maybe not just about today, but there may be questions remaining from the MaxQuant Basics 1 and 2 talks as well. So feel free to ask any question.
Morning. Thank you. Can you go back one slide? So my question is regarding to the E. coli data. So why they seem to be more spread than the human and the fungi, right? Yeah,
so in general, there's anyway probably more spread in general than one might expect, but this is because this is just a single shot without, I think, 90-minute one single shot 90-minute gradient, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
So that's why this is not performing to the best possible way.
Good, basically. Okay. So why the E. coli seems to have a bigger variance, I'm not sure why that is the case. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Does MaxQuant in general work for waters, Raphael?
At the moment, not. So we're working on the import on the plugin that reads the raw format from waters. So in principle, it works already now if you convert it. So that would be the only format that would have to be converted from the vendor raw format to MZ XML, for example. So if you manage to convert it, it should work already now.
Okay, so
but this would be conventional DDA data, so MSE data would actually not work. For now, maybe.
And for this IR mobility use?
Yeah, so I think it would not work without any further work on our side on water-specific elements, because it's not exactly the same way that that Bruker and Waters are doing this. So I think it would not work. Would not recommend it. So.
Thank you.
I was wondering how much the algorithms and the general workings of MaxQuant has changed since the early days, and whether we should reanalyze old raw files with the updated versions every few years.
Yeah, of course it is changing, unavoidably. I mean, if we have like a major development effort, then it will also change, unavoidably. We always hope for the better, so also we always recommend use the latest version possible. Well, reanalyzing old data, I don't know. I mean, depends what you are doing with this data. I mean, if it's, I mean, it certainly had valid results. I mean, nothing was majorly wrong in, let's say, a version from 8 years ago or something like this. But you might have higher identification rates now. You might have better quantification now. So in that sense, if it's like published and just lying there, I mean, there's no major reason to reanalyze it, I would say. But if, let's say, if this old data becomes part of a new project in some way, then it would anyway make sense to analyze all of this together with the new version. Yeah.
Thanks.
I have a question concerning the TMT label. Is this only possible with a 6-plex label on timsTOF, or also 10-plex and 11-plex?
No, so it's only 6-plex because the resolution at low mass is not enough on a TOF, because so TOF and Orbitrap, they have different characteristics in the resolution. The mass depends of the resolution, which is constant for more or less constant for a TOF machine, and which is increasing decreasing for an Orbitrap-like machine. So you have slightly lower resolution at the low mass and where the reporters are sitting.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Looks like there are no more questions.
Okay, if no more questions, we thank Juergen for these brilliant introductions. And then